Should religion be compulsory? In 2020, Kanye West ran for president. Kanye is not only famous for his impact on the music industry, but also his strong religious belief. If he won, he would most likely have attempted to put some form of Christian democracy in place. 7.79 billion people are religious on planet Earth. It's such an important part in our culture, our society, and basically everything we do. But how much of an impact does it really have? And what would life be like without it? Is it so important that everyone should be religious? Welcome to Here's My Theory. To clarify, I don't mean spiritual belief or some other attribute with religion that doesn't relate to ethic. Instead, I refer to ethics and religion. Should we live by religious ethic? Religion is constantly classified as the key ideology that defined modern day ethics, whether it be from a god or multiple gods. It's true that theological ethics plays a major role in moral philosophy, but where we attempt to interpret God's meaning leaves a fallacy. How are we to know if what God commands is right or wrong? Theology is the study of the divine and religious belief. It's been an important field of study to lead us to understand the supernatural, religious epistemology, and the idea of revelation, the idea that we can gain knowledge from supernatural entities. Theology covers a diverse range of religions, stemming from the immediately apparent Christianity and Buddhism, but it also incorporates some of the more obscure religions, native to smaller groups of people. It's easy to say that religion as a whole created ethics as we know it, because whether there's a god or not, they still founded a set of universal ethics that majority of us continue to live by today. However, some religions, specifically Christianity, had a much more significant impact than others. There's also strands of pseudo-religious groups, sometimes identified as pagan religions or cults. These groups were so heavily condemned in the earlier era of time, but they still remained in existence, and they've had some form of resurgence as they thrive in pop culture. When speculating on religious importance on morality, the question might arise, what if pagans had defined our moral standards rather than typical religious structures? Their inclusion of obscure and sometimes dangerous practices put them out of favor, but their initial identification wasn't actually pagans. They called themselves Christians. The origins of the word pagan were actually a derogatory phrase towards people who refused to give up old traditions as Christianity entered their town, and instead incorporated their own practices into the new religion. Nowadays, they're identified as cults and are consistently condemned for their novel practices. Ultimately, cults have made a minimal impact on our ethical values, but a large impact on our culture, which might be important for society's version of ethics. So after establishing religion, specifically ethics and religion, we've got to choose one religion to focus on and dissect the ethical pros and cons that are attributed to this religion. And what's more relevant than the most recent election? Kanye's implementation of a Christian democracy would have forced ethical values upon America. A Christian democracy is a political ideology that typically merges modern-day democratic politics with traditional Christian values. As with all politics, it's mainly defined by the candidate, and Kanye's heavy belief in religion would have most likely led to a democracy heavily influenced by Christian thought. He would have prevented things like abortion, same-sex marriage, drug use, atheist texts, assisted suicide, and capital punishment. The prevention of some of these would have had a neutral or even positive influence on our society, depending on one's views. But the most important thing shown with this list is not the items, but what the items demonstrate. It shows that Kanye would have reinforced the 10 Commandments, not only as optional rules one should follow, but as law. And on top of all of these compulsory laws, Kanye would have made church attendance compulsory and condemned atheist thought. So with that, let's get into the argument. Abortion should absolutely be an option. It's absurd to even consider a world where women had to birth every child they were impregnated with. When considering teen pregnancies, this ideology seems not only crazy, but also unethical. It isn't right, at least in my personal views, to prohibit such a harmless practice that in many cases saves people's lives. Abortion should be legal, and they should also be readily available for any people that may require the service. So reason number 1 against compulsory religion: abortions prevent unwanted pregnancies that can greatly restrict one's future. Same-sex marriage is, again, an absurd thing for a president to prohibit. It's not like you can change someone's sexuality, so by limiting same-sex marriage, you're simply ruining someone's life for your own moral gain. And that moral gain is so insignificant, it means you're virtually ruining someone's life for no reason. This is horribly selfish and needless. Reason number 2 against compulsory religion: stifling someone's sexuality has no benefit. Drug use and assisted suicide are personal choices. I'll simply gloss over these as they don't have a huge importance and they rely on the person who is willing to participate in these practices. They provide no reasoning towards compulsory religion. My views in capital punishment also won't aid my argument without an excessive amount of text. Instead of using it as a reason, I'll simply leave this comment on it. Would we have sent Hitler to a life in prison. Finally, atheist thoughts and text would have been invalidated by society. The lack of free speech leaves life dangerously close to Orwell's dystopian society in 1984. If Kanye has the right to restrict one's religious beliefs or the absence of them, what prevents them from restricting his own beliefs? Surely a society thrives through structured debate rather than religious overthrow. It's so much easier to point out the flaws in religion than to point out the flaws against it. So by restricting equal beliefs, you're giving a religion an advantage and you're creating a cult-like environment where it's wrong to believe that Christianity doesn't really explain much at all. Reason 3 against compulsory religion: freedom of speech is more important than religion. And finally, we have to realize that ethics are not universal but prescriptive. So it's unreasonable to presume that what's right in some instances is always right in all instances. To follow the view of prescriptivism, all ethics are simply our own moral values, which have been influenced by not only religion but our upbringing, society, the people around us, and any number of seemingly infinite values. To suggest that ethics is anything other than this is absolute absurdity, because we don't know every situation that will ever require an ethical output. So how are we to accurately predict what's right or wrong in it? So our 4 reasons against mandatory religion is: 1. Abortions are necessary to ensure the safety of someone's future. 2. Sexuality shouldn't be something a democracy has the right to control. 3. Freedom of speech and thought is more important than religion. 4. Ethics behind religion is inaccurate and there's no importance in reinforcing it. Now, this isn't a dig at religious ethics. Until now. Mandatory belief in Christianity has obvious problems when it comes to the resurrection, God, and other spiritual and supernatural instances in Christian history. These are so incredibly clear, so I'll skim over a few questions that might reinforce some of the problems I'm talking about. Is there a God? How are we to know what he commands? How permanent is death? So that bit there isn't a dig at religion, because those questions remain genuinely unanswered. There's an equal chance of there being a God as there is that there is no God. And to anyone who believes that there is, hi, I guess. I don't think there's any reason for me to think any lesser of you simply because your spiritual beliefs contradict mine. After all, religion doesn't define you as a person. I recommend checking out my other video on death if you want to learn a bit more about the third, but this bit here is a dig. How does God know what is right or wrong? To say he simply does seems somewhat unsatisfactory. The real reason here is even more absurd. God approves of right actions because they're right. Not because he has any reasoning or evidence or anything of the sort. And the same goes with wrong. If something's wrong, God says it's wrong. And God says it's wrong because it's wrong. And it's wrong because God says it is. And you get the point. Furthermore, how is God to know what is right or wrong? Not as in right in a scenario, I mean the definition of right or wrong. How does he know what action is considered to be right or wrong? We can speculate that God learnt of right or wrong through mathematics using the general terminology correct and incorrect, but God didn't create mathematics. We did. God created us to create mathematics, right? So how does he know what we should define as right or wrong? And then let's suppose he knows all of them. Why should we believe him? We've never perceived him or acknowledged his existence. We've only suggested that he could exist. So what right does God have commanding our lives when he doesn't even know what our lives are like? And let's say he knows everything, then why doesn't he tell us everything? And let's say he doesn't tell us for some grand master plan. What is the grand master plan? And let's say we shouldn't know, then why shouldn't we? And let's say he won't tell us, then why should we believe any of his reasoning or logic even exists in the first place? So let's loop back to Kanye. Kanye's Christian democracy is slightly altered in terms of laws and legalization. He has officially stated he would have legalized drugs. Great, Kanye, that is just splendid. But in terms of your ludicrous ideology on how the law should resemble Christian ethics, why should this ever exist in the first place? But let us rationalize. Kanye must have his reasoning, and here it is. Christianity should be mandatory because it is right. Kanye! My man, you make no sense whatsoever. You don't even have a jacuzzi.
Can you believe that? Can you believe we don't have a jacuzzi?
Why should I trust you? Who said Christianity is right? Oh, that's right, God did. And what is God a part of? Christianity. I'll use an analogy to truly display how absurd this is. Let's suppose you're a toddler and you're back at kindergarten. Every day when you walk in, a nice worker hands you a cookie. But you've decided you don't like cookies, you like stale bread. And that's fine. So now every day the worker hands you a small cut of stale bread to start off your day at kindergarten. Some of the kids think it's weird, but most of them just don't mind if you eat stale bread because they're still eating cookies. But one day you decide you love stale bread so much it must be the right thing to eat. So now you come to school with the idea that everyone who doesn't eat stale bread are eating the wrong thing. So you talk to the worker and the conversation goes a bit like this. Everyone should start eating stale bread.
But stale bread isn't as good.
But I really like it, so it must be good.
But other people don't like it.
Ah yes, but I have my reasonings. Stale bread is right because I say it's good. Cookies are wrong because I say they are not good.
Why don't you just let people eat what they want?
And scene. And this leads me to my final point. My final however many seconds of talking. Let people believe in what they want to believe in. Because as long as it's not harming others or something, it's their own belief and no one has the right to try and impose on that. Naturally, one's opinion influences others, but the idea of a Christian democracy that reinforces one singular group of people's beliefs rather than recognizing that people can have contrasting beliefs and none of them are right or wrong is an absurd mess. Let people think what they want to think. So, should religion be compulsory? No. Should people who want to believe in it? Yes. But they have no place attempting to force their own beliefs upon others. To anyone who may have gotten offended, I do love Kanye, I swear. I just disagree with him. Kanye, if you're watching this, which I know you are, take it easy, man. Liking, subscribing, and commenting helps out so much more than you could even imagine, and it would be great if you could do that. The sources are all in the description, and I hope you learned a thing or two, and most of all, have a good day.